Hello, everyone, and welcome to Co-Creation Station, the podcast where we talk about spiritual magic, the law of attraction, the art of allowing, the mind-body-spirit connection, and how to best enjoy this mystical, miraculous, mysterious, crazy, sometimes confounding, but always incredible journey we call life. This is Season 2, Episode 20 of the podcast. I'm recording this on Sunday, October 10th, and this episode is going live for the first time on Monday, November 1st, 2021. My name is Collin. I'm a teacher, tarot oracle card reader, and a singer and guitarist in the band Red Treasure, and I'm located in beautiful, sunny North Hollywood, California.
Woo, woo. My name is Stephanie Orlina, and I am a transformational life coach, and I help people shift away from negative thinking, and everything transforms for them. And today, I am recording from La Jolla, California.
All right, is La Jolla its own city, or is it part of San Diego?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact answer, so I'm not going to say either way.
It's close to. It's either a part of or very close to San Diego.
15 minutes from my house.
And people who have never been to Southern California call it La Jolla because it's spelled Lajolla,
Yes.
but it's called La Jolla.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you're listening to the audio version on Spotify, the Apple Podcast app, or wherever you get your podcasts, and thank you so much for watching us. If you're watching us on the Co-Creation Station YouTube channel, if you enjoy our show and you feel called to like this episode, give us a review, subscribe to or follow the podcast, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. We encourage you to do so as it really helps other people find us, and we appreciate your active support. We hope you had a happy Halloween yesterday, if you celebrate that. We also wish you Feliz Dios de los Muertos, or Happy Day of the Dead, which is today and tomorrow in Mexico, the United States, and other places. We also encourage you to celebrate our National Native American Heritage Month here in the United States, which kicks off today, November 1st. We encourage you to watch documentaries, visit museums, and learn about the history of Native American peoples from long before there was the United States of America all the way to today. Each week, we start our conversation from a different jumping off point, and today we are very fortunate and grateful to have a special guest with us today. Today we have TANIA Villegas, who is a practitioner of a special form of healing that incorporates yoga, crystals, and Reiki. Welcome, TANIA. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yay, Tanya.
Thank you for having me. I feel so honored and blessed to be here.
We feel similarly. We're really glad you could.
Thank you for blessing us with your presence. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to start out, Tanya. I mean, you and I have been friends. We met through our mutual friend Shishi, who was on one of our episodes in season 1. We had a great time when she came on. But once I got to know you, I've actually used your services. Like I've had healing sessions with you where you've done this amazing combination or convergence of yoga and Reiki and crystals. So my first question to you, I'm just curious about if you could tell us how you got into that mode of healing. Like, what was your journey that took you from not doing that to what you actually do today to help people heal?
Sure. So really quick, I know my name is in Spanish and it's really hard. It's VILLEGAS. So it's the double L, the pollo. Yes.
I think the first time I've ever said your last name out loud was just now on the podcast, on the internet for the whole world. And that would just make sense that I totally messed it up. So my apologies.
It's all good. Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, I could go for so long on this, or I could just touch on the important parts. So, I mean, it really just started because I suffered a traumatic brain injury, and coming out of it wasn't what I expected. I was 16, and I guess I just wanted to have my life back and how it was before. But it's like, now that I think of it in retrospect, of course, it's like bringing a veteran smack dab right where he was before and expecting him to live a normal life and go back to the normal routine. So sure, I wasn't in battle and didn't see the horrific things that some soldiers and warrior victims see, but it is a transformational and it is a traumatic experience. And so I did just that. I thought I could come back into my life and just kind of pick up the pieces and just go. so I tried that and it didn't work. I was in college, my last year in college, and I almost took a medical leave of absence. Like, I cannot do this. I can't finish. Like, I'm going to go and do something because I'm so depressed and so anxious. So I saw a therapist at CSUN and really, really helped me. And it helped the parts just kind of put myself back together and make me more functional. And so I was like, okay, I'm ready, I'm fixed, let's just go. Again, it happened. And so I wonder why in my 20s, like, I was just feeling so depressed and I didn't know why. Things would happen. And of course, as life brings strife and struggle, it doesn't help with the already accumulation of the trauma and the things we need to heal from. So it just keeps adding and adding. And I just noticed I was always going out and drinking and like running away from the things that I really needed to look at. And anyway, long story short, I finally found my way to Reiki through what is called We Spark. And it's an organization for people with cancer or family members of cancer patients. And so my aunt is a cancer survivor. And so she would go there and she was like bringing me along, like, there's a Reiki practitioner you should come and see. And so that's how I started. And once I got into Reiki and I kept seeing my Reiki practitioner, Wendy, who is actually now my Reiki teacher, I started realizing that there's so much more to pain than like, oh, you were in a car accident and you physically got hurt, right? There's emotional pain that causes actually that physical pain to come up. And I got into, I met some other people through a friend. I met this woman who referred me to like crystals, and she was like, okay, she did like a little mini healing with me. And then she was just telling me like, you need this crystal, you need that crystal, da, 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 da. And she was like, actually, there's a really close by crystal store that you can just go to. And so I went. It's called the Native Spirit Lodge in Woodland Hills. And I went and I just got a bunch of crystals. And I started wearing a bunch of crystal bracelets, and I started to intuitively put them on top of my body. And I actually looked online. This is when I started like my self-study. Then I was like, okay, chakras, bracelets, what goes where and what is what. So that's when I started out looking and finding out about our chakra system. And then I started placing this actual carnelian bracelet on my sacral chakra and the citrine on my solar plexus. And I just kept like distributing bracelets along my chakra line. And that's when I started to look into and learn about the chakra systems and how crystals can help. And then I just started to work for a yoga studio, Yoga Works, and then I became a yoga teacher. Through that, it was just like a process. And working at Yoga Works, then I was like, oh, I want to be a Reiki instructor or a Reiki practitioner. And one of the teachers referred me. So it just kind of like started to click into place. But I still, at that moment, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do for work. Like, I was a nanny. I was not really satisfied. But I was just kind of going with the flow. And then Yoga Works was offering a discount for teacher training. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take it. I'll take the discount to become a teacher. And just things started to kind of go in that route. And everyone that I worked with at the yoga studio was like, oh, you should become a yoga teacher. And they were always just gravitating to me, like coming to me with advice or for advice and like asking me about things. And I don't know, it was just interesting. And so how am I going to tie this all together? Let's see. So then I started to make crystal bracelets, and I was like, okay, I want everybody to like use crystals in their life. And it's easy when there's bracelets. And so I also realized like every time I bought a bracelet, I had to actually take it apart and make it smaller because it was like made for a man's wrist or something. I don't know. They're always so big. And so I was like, I'll make them different sizes, small, medium, large, you know? And so I started making bracelets. And when I was making bracelets, I was like, oh, there's a thing called crystal healer. Like, I'll do that. So then I can know more about crystals and then be more legit. So then I'm like, Reiki practitioner, crystal healer. And then the last thing was a yoga teacher. I was like, I can put all of these things together as I've been using it for my own healing because yoga was super helpful for me, like getting into my body and moving the energy and really finding that like center, that stillness that it creates. And I remember finding myself like crying during Shavasana, during the last pose. I was like, why am I crying? You know, like what's going on? But I knew there was something there. It was transformational, you know? And I was like, okay, put these things together and create this amazing experience. And so actually, Collin was one of my first clients or my first students because we had been going to an angel circle weekly.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Pretty much. And a few of us kind of gathered together for a couple of, you know, little sessions with each other, just trying to help guide each other and give suggestions. And it was really lovely and wonderful and supportive. And he was like amazed of the whole thing after the session. And I was like, okay, this is like a real thing. It's not just like something that I'm trying to like pull things together. And from there, I guess I just started little by little, and that's how it all came about.
That's beautiful. Could you go back? Well, there's a couple things. I'd love for you to go back when you said you were in that yoga pose towards the end of the yoga and these emotions came up, because I really want to have you explain like what was going on and the benefit of that. But it really sounds like you were in the flow. You mentioned it before, and you followed your interests, and you didn't really know, but you had this open mind, and then you were led to this and to this, and then the angel circle, and then it was like you got a ton of. It sounds like you got a ton of support along the way. Like you were really being guided, and spirit just kind of led you. Like, would you have ever thought that because of this brain injury that then you would be where you are today because of that incident?
No, I felt honestly, and sometimes I'll be honest, like sometimes I do go back and I felt like doomed. You know, like, okay, this happened to me, and now this is how I am because of it, and I'm not really a fan of it, right? Like it felt like a lot more challenge than the other person, but it's always like the grass is greener on the other side. Like I have no idea what the other person is going through. And so it's really irrelevant. But yeah, so in the moment, of course, one doesn't feel supported. Like I didn't feel supported, but Collin and our other friend, Michelle, we were just like, oh my gosh, we were supporting each other. And it was just so amazing because it was exactly what needed to happen. And um, it really was a support, and it really was like a guiding little by little. And definitely going with like interests and possibility was another thing that was really awesome, because in the moment I was like, okay, well, I'll just do this and see, you know, what happens. I really didn't have an ulterior motive aside from like, okay, this will help my jewelry brand, you know, I'll be able to be a little more in the know about what I'm doing. And then I'll just add that I always had the teacher training in the back of my head. But I was like, nah, you know, maybe in April. And if it's in April, then I'll do it with David Lynch. And so it was pretty specific that I did that. And my friend was like, oh, are you going to do the next teacher training? She was already enrolled in the present one. And I was like, I don't know. She's like, David Lynch, and it starts in April. And I was like, what?
That's great.
So I was like, yeah, you know, like it was exactly what I wanted and how I really called it in. That was really cool to see.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm listening to your story because I heard parts of it that I'd never heard before. So I was really fascinated by it. I mean, it really seems like, because, you know, we've had lots of different healers on the podcast as guests, and the theme that Stephanie and I keep seeing in it, because of what our sort of specialty is how almost every mode of healing like helps you get into alignment with your true self, which helps you align with the universe, which helps you kind of, you know, welcome in the life that your spirit truly wants for you. And as I listen to your story, it's not necessarily that you were like headed off in a bad direction before the brain injury incident. It's just that you, for whatever reason, you weren't on the best track for your spiritual journey, you know? And I think a lot of people can relate to, you know, having this kind of almost mission put in front of you. Like, you can't go back and do your old mission. You have to do this new mission, and having that kind of internal feeling of like, well, I don't really want to do this new mission. Like, I want to go back and do my old mission, you know, but the fact that you were open to it and you allowed yourself to just sort of like, Stephanie sent me this quote from Abraham this week, and I put it on my bulletin board up here because it blew my mind, literally, even though I should know this, especially from doing 2 seasons of this podcast. But it's meditate, think happy thoughts, follow your impulses, live happily ever after. That's all you need to know. And it blew my mind, because we can make life so complicated, you know, like I've had that experience, not maybe at the level that you had it after your incident, but that experience of like, life is clearly trying to take me in this other direction, and I'm fighting it. And I'm like trying to analyze it, figure it out, and figure out how I can do something else, or why I shouldn't do this thing or whatever. And I'm making it complicated instead of really being open to the opportunities that the universe is presenting to me. And I think in that moment, what I miss out on is maybe what I want is on the other side of this mission that's in front of me that doesn't thrill me at this exact moment, you know, or I didn't think of myself as doing this mission, you know, at this point in my life. But maybe what I truly want is still on the other side of that, if I just trust and, you know, open up to it. And I think that's one of the amazing things about your story, is like, even though you had that resistance that most humans have, you know, you gradually opened up and was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be doing this, and I guess I'm supposed to be doing that. And you allowed yourself to fall in love with these things. And what I love about what you do, like, one of my favorite things is people who bring different things together. I don't know why. Like, ever since I was a little kid, like, I was writing short stories, and I was taking the characters from Star Trek and Star Wars and like other movies and like putting them all in a story together. And people would tell me like, you can't do that. And I'm like, why not? It's awesome. Like, but
now they have the Avengers, and we love it.
Yeah. Don't even get me started. I read the Avengers in the 1980s when everybody said it was the worst comic book. Everybody was like all into Spider-Man and Batman. And I was like, I really like the Avengers. And I was like, that's so lame. Like, years later.
That's why you liked it. How cool.
Yeah.
Because you were doing that as a kid.
Also, I'm psychic. But yeah, but what I love about your modality of healing, and I had an instructor for a while in New York who did like a yoga Pilates kind of fusion, but I never had a specifically yoga teacher. And what I loved about working with you is that, for me, I'm in my head like way too much, and it's really helpful for me to get into the body. Mm-hmm. And yoga really helps me do that. Mm-hmm. But it also, because I'm in my head a lot, getting into my body is very uncomfortable at first. Mm-hmm. And as amazing as the yoga poses that you walk me through are, they also bring up a lot of like kind of uncomfortable stuff. And what I love about the Reiki and crystal part of what you do is that for me helps like settle that discomfort down and like brings me open to the real healing of the yoga. Whereas, you know, if I only had the yoga, I'm sure it would help me, but I also feel like I would be very uncomfortable and like, you know, might not do it again for a while, or might be cranky later in the day. And I think when people are starting something, especially that discomfort of the new thing, it's always exciting to start something. But then when you get into the meat of it, quite often new things just have a discomfort because we're not used to doing them. And I think the crystal healing and the Reiki healing that you do is like so like centering and calming. Like I just felt, you know, I remember my first session with you, and I was like, the yoga was great, but it was also demanding, and it was like, I don't want to say stressful, because it wasn't like I wasn't worrying about anything, but it was like there was discomfort to it. But then the crystal and the Reiki around that really helped me like just be with it and just like accept what the healing that was coming from it. It's really incredible. Like it's really incredible.
Yeah. I'll get to it. But yeah, you know, going back to your question, Stephanie, as far as like just to put it together with Shavasana, the end pose, and it may not even come at the end pose, you know, like the emotions. It may come during, like Collin was saying, like, yeah, I believe yoga can be stressful, you know, because when we're beginning, we're not used to like focusing on the outer hip. Like, what the heck? You know, we're focusing on our to-do list and what we should have done and could have done and would have done in the past, right? So when we are having to actually be in this moment and focusing on that damn outer hip, we are causing ourselves some stress because the mind wants to go back to its habitual pattern. And so it can happen then, and it can bring frustration and pain and even anger and just like an aversion. And that's why some people don't come back, you know, like I know, Collin, you're saying sometimes that's why maybe, you know, others won't come back. And that is predominantly a big reason. But for me, Shavasana, the teacher, she was talking about like how, I don't know, it was just really lovely and really just like gentle and stating that, just allowing our emotions to arise. And I was feeling so much, and it was just this deep sadness. And that really, to someone that's new, because I was newer at the time when I was taking this, I didn't know what the hell was happening. You know, like I'm in a yoga class, I'm supposed to be happy, or I came happy, you know, unbeknownst to me. But now all of this like sadness is coming up, and I remember just like beginning to cry. And I remember I took up, like I got the courage to like tell the teacher, like, I don't know what it is, but every time I'm in Shavasana and you say that, like it was the same statement she would make every time. It brings a lot of like sadness and emotion from me. But at the time, I don't think the teacher knew how to handle it. So she was like, oh, okay, have a good one. You know? And I was like, like I just like deflated. It was, by the way, at 24-hour fitness. So kind of makes sense. And so, yeah, that's a good one, right? So there is a long pause because I didn't continue my membership. But when I actually got back to yoga was when I was more in tune, more knowing of, that was when I was already making crystal jewelry, and I was already like getting Reiki sessions from the practitioner. So I didn't so much need to go and tell the teacher like how I was feeling. I kind of knew then. It was like, oh, but it wasn't happening anymore. So that was cool. But I did hear like coworkers tell me about it. I was like, oh, you know, this is a thing. And So yeah, and to talk about the crystals and the Reiki portion of it, it helps you ground and really um, feel like you're comforted and supported. And it's like this, almost like this, like little cloud that you're in. And at times, Reiki and crystals can bring up things just like yoga, but I think it's a lot more subtler and a lot more gentle.
Can you talk a little bit about how crystals work? I mean, I know those of us that are into crystal healing, like, we understand it, but I mean, there may be people listening that have no idea how they actually work. Like, why does putting a certain rock on a certain place of your body do something? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so crystals emit this certain type of energy, and all of crystals are pristine and perfect, and they harmonize our energy system. And some crystals, like I'll say carnelian, activates the sacral chakra, and the sacral chakra has to do with the pleasure principle, creativity, fertility, vitality. And so with this specific crystal, if you place it on your sacral chakra, then that sacral chakra, they're basically both associated with each other. Sacral and carnelian are a match by not just the traits and the healing properties, but also the color. So sacral chakra is like orangey red, and then so is carnelian. So that's a cool way to like start to use crystals, is like, oh, okay, look at the chakra system, look at their colors, and then match the color to the chakra. But using the crystal will emit that type of energy and will activate that type of energy and really envelope you with that supportive energy that you're seeking, specifically those things. But we have more than one chakra. There are more than one crystals. We can use, there's like endless amounts of crystals that you can use for whatever you're looking to gain. And it's a little overwhelming. Like for me personally, I kind of don't feel super confident in crystal healing because there's so many crystals and my brain can't store all of it. And I'll use like my books and stuff, and then I go into this comparison where like other Reiki or crystal healers don't have to do that, and like people think I'm a fraud, so
Compare and despair. Ooh,
that's
wicked.
just a little silly side note of mine. But yeah, it's best to use your intuition when you pick a crystal. And if it's shiny and beautiful and bright to you in the store and you're like, I like that, grab it and buy it. About what it is, like, get it later after you purchased it. But yeah, it's calling to you. Like, they have their way of like bringing attention to you, and they're really asking for you to like start working with them.
That's awesome.
I feel like when we talk about that, what comes up for me is that, so I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about vision boards, which I told Stephanie on text message yesterday. We need to do an episode just on vision boards, because it's like, that's something that a lot of people, even if they haven't heard of the law of attraction or crystal healing or anything, like, they've heard of vision boards. But this person was asking me like, why do they work? And I said, it's not like vision boards are some one-off magical thing that do some weird thing that nothing else does. Like, what a vision board does is you put things on it that resonate with who you really are and what you really want in your life. And the goal is, like, you look at it, it makes you happy, and then you're creating that energy and that vibration with your mind, with your body, with your emotions. But all of that is really just, trying to lower the defenses or reduce the resistance, or, get into a place, as we talk about here, of allowing instead of forcing or grabbing or
deflecting,
crushing,
blocking.
yeah, or blocking. Yeah. And so that's what I feel like is so cool about the crystals is that, they're basically from, like you say, they're perfect. Like, and we're talking about the internal structure of them, like from a scientific standpoint, they're perfect. And they come from the earth, and they have this particular structure, and that's what makes them crystals. And so they're giving off this vibration. They're radiating with this particular energy, and it's like you get to use that to help lower your defenses, your blocks. Because if like our pure spirit, it seems to me, doesn't really need, like, if we're talking about our actual spirit or soul or whatever your vision of that is, without the human mind, without the human body, we don't really need vision boards or crystals or anything like that, like, because we're connected to the universe that creates everything. But the thing is, we are in these human bodies having this human experience, and most of us have had some kind of trauma. And what trauma just naturally creates is resistance, blocks, all these different things. And so I think one of the things that's really cool to me about crystals is like you have something available to you that's already resonating with the energy that you want to be available to. And you may have a block, but by, holding that crystal close to your body or putting it on a bracelet and walking around with it all day, like, you are allowing, in a sense, you're allowing Mother Earth's natural power to help align you so that you lower your blocks and defenses, and you attract, whatever that element is, more of it into your life, whether it's health or, romance and dating opportunities or business opportunities and money and all that kind of stuff. And I can understand people being skeptical about, like, well, how can a rock help me make more money? And it's like, well, if you have, there's probably a longer, more complicated explanation of it, but at the simple level, if you have a block to, something in your trauma history makes you blocked to money. Really what that is a block to sustenance. It's a block to nourishment, because that money is how we nourish ourselves. It's how we buy food, it's how we pay for shelter, that sort of thing. So that's a very primal thing. That's not, even though we know that, money is like a modern thing, in the world. And all you're doing, if you have a crystal that helps with abundance, it's like, how can a rock, help with financial abundance? All you're doing is you're taking a rock that is naturally giving off the energy of attracting sustenance, and you're using that to lower your blocks and defenses to that, so that you welcome in more sustenance or more money. And it's not really that complicated. It's actually really simple when you boil it down.
Yeah, and taking it to that, like, connection of the earth and how we are really just souls trapped into bodies. It's that connection that we're naturally aligned with. Using these crystals are like Mother Nature's gifts for us, and these are what we should be using. Just like using plant medicine, and breath.
Water, natural,
water,
yeah.
So
we would not exist without water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I don't know if a lot of our listeners know about Reiki. I don't even think we've really gone.
I was going to say, like, TANIA has this very special triad that she does, but she's also the first yoga teacher we've had on, the first Reiki practitioner we've had on, and the first crystal healer we've had on. So it's like
trifecta.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about Reiki?
Yeah. So Reiki is a channeled energy that comes from the purest and highest level of consciousness. So whatever you deem divine, God, Allah, saints, archangels, deities, could be all of them, because that's me. And it's coming from this pure energy. Practitioners serve as a channel. So just as a vessel for this energy to flow through and to whoever is receiving it. And because it's energy, time and space has no relevance in it. It is beyond time and space. So I can actually send Reiki to past trauma, past history, past events, and or send it to future, and obviously present. So it's pretty abstract, as all of these modalities are, and very quantum, because it is beyond our minds. Energy is just, we can't see it. It's felt, experienced, and you know, just like with crystals, it's like, what? Okay, I'll just hold a rock and it'll whatever. You know, it's Reiki, like you'll hear the explanation and you're like, So a lot of the times, right? A lot of the times,
I have a story. Yeah.
I can't wait to hear it. So with me, because I am very, very analytical and very in the head as a Gemini and generating manifestor in human design, I have to provide that information in the beginning of a session to people that have not experienced it. Like I do Reiki sessions for CSUN, for Cal State Northridge, and there'll be students and faculty, and I'll give that description and I'll tell them, like, you know, it sounds crazy, but we'll just experience it and then we'll talk about it, how you feel afterwards. And so yeah, it's an easily judged trait or a judged modality, I feel like.
Yeah. Thank you. So several years ago, I took a Reiki Practitioner 1 class, and I had completed it that afternoon and went to see my stepdad, who had been sick with a cold, head cold, chest cold for weeks. And he said, upon seeing him, yeah, I haven't been able to breathe for like 3 weeks or whatever, you know, like through his nose or whatever. And I said, oh, I just learned this, you know, Reiki, can I use it on you? And he's like, sure. So I stood behind him, you know, with my hands just above his shoulders, and I did the Reiki that I had learned. And when I finished, he's like, Steph, I can breathe. I could breathe through my nose. That was the first time in weeks. I'm like, oh my God. You know, it was like my first experience of, you know, having helped someone with Reiki. And I said to him, I go, I think I called him like a few days later. I go, oh, would you do me a favor and write me a testimonial? And he started hemming and hawing. Well, you know, Steph, I don't know that it really worked. And I can't tell you how much he thanked me when we finished it. And he was like, whoa. And then his analytical mind, you know, he started questioning his experience, and then he's like, I can't. And so I think that happens a lot with energy work in general. Like we really question, did that really happen?
Yeah. Like I'll have, clients or students that will experience it, and then they'll be like, I felt this and I felt that and I saw this and all like just like wonderful things, and they're like, but I don't know what it was. And I'm like and I'm like, well, it was Reiki, you know, like the acceptance of it is really difficult to take in, because it's not, we're often like, society doesn't, now I think it's a lot more common and a lot more people are like seeing the energy, yes, or seeing energy content, and in media it's a lot more available, but there's still that analytical brain that's like, oh, but I don't know what it is, you know, like maybe it was just me. I hear that a lot, you know, maybe it was just me. I don't know what that was. And I'm like, okay, we'll just leave it there.
You know what's weird to me about that? Because I'm the one, I don't think Stephanie doesn't seem to have any skepticism about anything anymore, which I greatly admire. But I was like raised to be a skeptic. And so allowing myself to, you know, go to Angel Circle and open up to my medium abilities and all these other things, you know, has been challenging at times, you know, but I'm the one that still talks about skeptics, and I think it's good that I'm here, because there are people who want to take advantage of these healing modalities that are available to us, but they have some you know, they have some mental resistance around it. What surprises me about when something works like that, and then someone has doubts about whether it was that thing that did it. My thing is always, who cares?
Right?
You know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Good point.
It really
Why
seems
do we
like,
have to? Yeah.
yeah, because I always think that like one of the ways that the blocks or defenses or resistance we have from our earlier trauma, the way it manifests is a desire to control what is not our job to control. It's to control things that the universe is actually, by the way, controlling just fine all the time. But we want to step in and we want to grab control. And I feel like that's the thing that doesn't make any sense when the skepticism hits in that scenario, is that, it's that it's not just that they want to understand what made it happen. It's like they have to have proof. And if they can't have physical proof that they could demonstrate to everyone, then they're actually going to go the other way and say, I'm not even sure it actually worked. And it's like, why would you get healing that actually did some good stuff, and then just because you want to control it, say that it didn't help you, or something like that? It's like a lot of people really struggle with just something mysterious that they don't fully understand helped them. And I'm just sort of like, take the help. Don't, like, why question it? Who is going to get hurt by you not controlling how that healing happened? You know what I mean? It's weird.
I think for me, I like to say too, I'm like, well, and if anything, if you're still not sure about it, at least you get to meditate and you get to feel somewhat comforted or be in peace. And,
It really softens the resistance, doesn't
that
it?
just gives them like okay,
permission.
well,
like,
and
I like that.
With people like that find the extreme, like, oh, but I don't really know if it was, I don't know what it was, and are kind of a little more adamant about it. It's I see it as just like not really a time for them to explore yet the experience, maybe. And it's also with divine timing, like that's another important thing with Reiki, especially, is that it's not this thing that is like, okay, so your intention is to become abundant, financially. Well, if they haven't learned the lessons that they needed to learn to understand what abundance is, and what that, being grounded in being grounded and knowing that we're always being supported, then the Reiki is not going to completely heal and just like be this fixer of like, okay, woof, hocus pocus, like you're abundant. Like, it actually waits for the person to learn their lessons. And those lessons need to be learned for the healing to be done. And there's these two things that happen during a Reiki session. There's receiving and there's releasing. So you're either ready to release and learn from it, or you're receiving some healing, or it could be both. But that prominent feature of like, we're not going to, it's just like free will, we're not going to come in and try to cure this thing, because this thing is here for a reason. And once that person understands why it's there, then we're able to work more with that.
Tanya, that's beautiful. I love that, because that's so true, right? I mean, I remember years ago listening to, maybe Tony Robbins or someone, and they were giving an example of a woman who had gotten in a car accident. And we've talked about this before, like nothing's bad, right? Like your brain wasn't bad. But, and then he told her story, and he's like, yeah, if she had not gotten in that car accident, she wouldn't have been able to see like the work she was doing wasn't really for her, and it gave her some time off, and she was able to heal. And then she was guided towards some work that she really loved, and she may have met the man of her dream, whatever it was. And so, and then something else I want to reflect back on is when you talked about, yeah, it didn't go smooth. And I definitely like went down that rabbit hole of negative thinking and felt horrible. Like, yeah, that's all part, like, I feel that oftentimes. Collin does too. We don't even try to say like we're always like happy joy 24/7, but that it seems more often like what I hear that you probably did was just like you kept putting on the boots and just kept, picking yourself up and moving forward. And I think with anything, that's always, it's like, okay, what would be better right now? What would feel better? How am I thinking? What am I feeling? What can I do to take care of myself? And in depression and focus, it's like if you would have just focused on your accident and how my life is over, yeah, we're going to perpetuate that, right? Law of attraction's always energetically responding to us, and then we're just going to get more of that, where it sounds like you just kept wanting to feel better even though things were rough.
Mm-hmm.
And that because you had that, and I like to think of it as an innate desire to, okay, I need help, I need something, that you kept seeking that and you kept getting it. I don't know where else I was going to go with that, but yeah. Period.
Because we're running out of time here, but I did just want to ask you, Tanya, and this is a big ask, but can you talk briefly about specifically why yoga is important and how it's helped you and what you've seen it do for other people that you've worked with?
Yeah, so yoga is important because it is a way to feel embodied. So oftentimes I think a lot of us kind of walk around in these neat things,
meat suits,
don't really pay attention to it. And we may understand like, oh, after a massage or during a massage, you're just like, whoa, I didn't know I had pain there, or what? Really? All these questions start coming up. And so because we don't and can't always get a massage every week or twice a week, I feel yoga is a way to like get to know the body on a personal level without someone really touching you, right? And so you're actually like on the mat rolling and rocking and like, oh, my right rib, oh, my left hip. You're starting to connect with your body. And I think that connection with body, there's a connection to mind and there's a connection to soul. So it brings that whole trifecta together in the practice. I think that's super important, is to connect to your body because it is our house. And if we nourish it, then it's going to be good to us. And that's going to look differently from one person to the next. But, we talk so much about, society talks so much about diet and eating healthy. And when you're in a yoga practice, like you see how important that is, like you understand different aspects of yourself in such a raw and like, oh yeah, maybe eating that burger super late was not a good idea because I feel really bloated. And it's like impeding in what I need to do. And it could be yoga and it could even be like an exercise class, but it's just really bringing it to your attention.
Tanya, does yoga help with digestion?
Yoga helps with digestion. It's in the ancient texts that like certain poses help with digestion, like twists and stuff. But, then science comes and it's like, no, not really. But I think it just helps overall with health.
Yeah. Well, even when you were talking about it earlier at the beginning of this episode, I was like just noticing like, oh, how do my shoulders feel? Oh, like as you were speaking about yoga, I was just noticing all my tension in my shoulder, and, so it was really like, yeah, it was great because I was like, because I do hold a lot of tension in my shoulders. But I had a friend once say, Ruby, she's like, oh, I could get a massage every day. And I'm like, every day? Like, I don't think I could get a massage but after getting a massage, it's wonderful in the moment. But then I'm back to doing whatever it is that I'm doing that's causing that stress. And so it's temporary. Where I know like getting it regularly is super beneficial. But you talking about the yoga specifically, it was like, oh yeah, just being present, just noticing what's going on.
And really quick, just to add, like bringing awareness to your tendencies as far as like where you experience stress and like there's a lot of people in yoga in poses that are always raising their shoulders up and like super tense in warrior two, or like maybe cranking the neck in like warrior one. And so it just brings awareness, like I'm constantly telling you that you have to keep your chin parallel to the floor. And what does that tell you? Like that you create tension or you carry tension in your neck. So for me, I also used to do that, and I also used to do that. So I'm just bringing it to me that it's something that we take on and off the mat.
And I'm going to make a quick plug for you because that's another thing that I was just really, I'm continually blown away by anytime I have a lesson with you, which is that I think, there are people who are great at doing yoga, but in order to be a great yoga teacher, you have to be great at doing it, and you have to be great at helping other people do it. And I don't think those things go together automatically. And one of my fears about taking a yoga lesson is what I knew ahead of time. I really struggle with perfectionism. And so that makes me sometimes avoid, teachers or situations where I hear like they're very, hardcore, or they really drill it into you or something like that, because not that I know some people are helped by that methodology, but for me, it triggers my perfectionism. I end up feeling bad about, I'm doing this healing thing, and I end up at the end of it feeling bad about myself. It's like completely upside down. And all the lessons I've had with you, you have a very amazing talent at being able to guide the person into the correct pose, and even say, which happens a lot, like, okay, your wrists are, your wrists are completely, tense. Can you just relax your wrist just a little bit or something like that? But I mean, honestly, every time I've had a lesson with you through the whole thing, I feel like you are like a gentle, loving, supportive guide through that process. You're not a drill sergeant or anything like that, because it is important. Like for me, like my body I just haven't taken very good care of it, frankly. So, I mean, my natural poses are really messed up. So there's a lot to correct, when I'm trying to get into a particular pose. But, every time I've had a lesson with you, you've been able to guide me into that. And I just feel like so, supported and cared about, not like, do this, do that kind of thing. Not that a lot of yoga teachers are like drill sergeants, but I felt like I could see myself, even with somebody who's not, mean or anything, but somebody who's just like constantly correcting me and being like hard on myself, like, oh, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right. Well, screw this. I'm not doing yoga again, and you just had this really beautiful way of just, guiding me through it. And what that helped me find from the limited experience with yoga that I've had through you is that, just, aside from the overall health effects and just, I think it helps people get centered. I think a lot of people experience the benefits the same way they do as meditation. Like it just helps you get more clear, less in the crazy of the day, less, that sort of thing. But what I experienced was just that, like, my body like feels like, and I never experienced this until I did yoga with you. Like my body wants to go into certain positions. Like it feels really good to be like in balance physically in your body. Like if you have if you're in one of those poses and you have your hands on the floor and your feet on the floor and your body is in balance, there's a feeling to that. There's an emotion to that and a physical sensation that it's just like, wow, my body was built to do this,
Well-being.
Like I don't do this when I'm like stressed out at work and craning my, crinkled up, like that doesn't feel like my body's doing what it was meant to do. But there's times where you would help me into a pose and I'd just be like, I had this sense that like, wow, my body's really happy right now because it's built to do this. And I've never done this before. Like, it's like, finally, this is one of the things we're really good at, Collin, you know? And so that was just like, it helped beyond just helping me get into my body. I think it helped me really start forming a relationship between my mind and my body that isn't like, I feel like in our culture, there's so much of a war between those things. Like, we're trying to, with our minds, force ourselves on a diet. With our minds, we're trying to force ourselves to do this workout DVD that we bought 10 years ago and we never watched, you know, and there's this disconnection between the mind and the body. And it feels like we're in our minds fighting with our body, or our bodies are betraying us or fighting against us. And for me, the thing that came out of my yoga work with you was like, oh, like, my body's awesome, my mind is awesome, but they are different things within me and they need to work. My life is the best when they work together.
Very spiritual.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. We're out of time. I feel like we could talk forever about this, but thank you so much, Tanya. It was a real pleasure to have you here. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of what you shared here today. So thank you for that.
Tanya, can you work with people via Zoom? Is it all in person, or do you also work with people remotely?
Yeah, so
I'm an in-person client and a Zoom client. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted some clarity on that. That's good to know.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me.
You're welcome. It was wonderful to have you here.
So your business right now, your primary business is called Healing with Tanya. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't get your last name right, but I got your business name right. I will put your links to your stuff in all the explanations and everything, but for people that are in their car listening only, do you have like a web address or an Instagram or whatever that would be the best?
healingwithtanya.com, and Instagram is same, Healing with Tanya.
And then could you spell the way you spell
Tania? It's also different.
Which is fitting because you're unique.
Yes, very unique.
Stephanie, if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do it?
www.powerinjoy.com, POWERINJOY, and I have a free 30-minute discovery session. I look forward to chatting with you. And
best way to reach me, you can follow me or write me a message on Instagram. I'm at Collin, COLLIN _Daniels, DANIELS _Worster, WORSTER. You can also find my band Red Treasure on Spotify, Apple Music, and other platforms. Thank you so much for listening to us. If you've listened to the audio version on your podcast platform, thank you so much for watching us. If you watched us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, whatever you feel called to do to help other people find the show. We really appreciate it. We wish you a prosperous, abundant, and healthy week, and we'll see you next time on Co-Creation Station. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, y'all.